In 1997, this company had less than 90 days left to live. No miracle product, no backup plan, just a shrinking bank account and a future that was quietly closing in. Today, that same company doesn't just run computers. It runs governments, hospitals, schools, and the invisible systems behind your daily life. This is not a story about software. It's a story about control. So how did a company that almost disappeared become one of the most powerful forces on Earth? What decisions were made when no one was watching? What lines were crossed when survival demanded it? And more importantly, what did it cost to win? Because every empire leaves fingerprints, even the ones built in silence. Before Microsoft became a logo, before it became a verb, before it became unavoidable, it was just an idea, a stubborn one, an idea born not in luxury, but in obsession. This is the rise of Microsoft, from zero to dominance. Bill Gates wasn't trying to change the world. He was trying to escape it. As a child, he didn't fit anywhere. Too intense, too focused, too obsessed. While others learned how to belong, Bill learned how to think. Hours alone with machines, code replacing conversation, logic replacing emotion. Computers didn't judge him, they obeyed him. And for the first time in his life, Bill Gates felt control. By the time most teenagers were discovering freedom, Bill was discovering power. Not physical power, not social power, mental power, the ability to tell a machine what to do and watch it obey without question. This wasn't passion, it was fixation. And fixation, when paired with intelligence, doesn't fade. It sharpens. In the 1970s, computers were not personal. They belonged to corporations, governments, institutions. But Bill saw something others didn't. He didn't see machines. He saw people. People who would one day need computers without understanding them. And whoever controlled that bridge would control the future. So Microsoft wasn't built to make hardware. It was built to sit in between, invisible, essential, untouchable. Then came the deal that changed everything. IBM, the giant everyone feared, needed an operating system. Microsoft didn't have one, but Bill Gates said yes anyway. Not because he was ready, but because he understood something deeper. Speed beats perfection. Ownership beats invention. He didn't sell software. He sold time. And time, once sold correctly, becomes leverage. The deal made Microsoft rich, but it also did something far more dangerous. It put Microsoft everywhere, without anyone noticing. While the world focused on IBM, Microsoft quietly placed itself inside every machine. Not as a product, as a necessity. But power gained quietly is power that demands payment later. Because once Microsoft was inside the system, it didn't want to leave. Competitors began to notice. Developers began to worry. Governments began to watch. And Bill Gates made a choice that would define the next 20 years. He didn't want to be the best option. He wanted to be the only option. And that decision would turn Microsoft from a company into an empire. By the early 1990s, Microsoft wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Its software was already everywhere, in offices, in schools, in government buildings, quietly shaping how the world worked. Windows didn't feel revolutionary. It felt inevitable. And inevitability is far more powerful than innovation. Because people don't fight what they believe they can't escape. As Microsoft grew, something else grew with it. Fear, not among users, among competitors. Because Microsoft didn't just compete, it absorbed, it bundled, it suffocated. If a new product threatened Windows, Microsoft didn't improve faster. It changed the rules. And suddenly, innovation started dying quietly, not because it failed, but because it was never allowed to breathe. Microsoft understood something most companies didn't. People don't choose operating systems. They inherit them. So Microsoft didn't chase consumers. It locked in manufacturers, developers, enterprises. By the time users touched a computer, the decision was already made for them. Freedom was replaced with convenience, and convenience, when repeated daily, rewires behavior. This was the moment Microsoft stopped being a business and started becoming a force that shaped markets, a force that dictated standards, a force that decided who lived and who disappeared. Competitors weren't beaten, they were erased, and the world began to ask a dangerous question. Was Microsoft still playing the game, or had it become the game itself? Power is safest when it's invisible. Microsoft forgot that. As its dominance grew, so did the attention. Governments noticed patterns, regulators noticed fear, the public noticed something unsettling. Choice was disappearing. And in 1998, the silence broke. The United States government did what no competitor could. It sued. This wasn't just a lawsuit. It was a public trial of power. For the first time, Microsoft wasn't in control of the environment. Emails were exposed, strategies were questioned, intentions were dissected. And Bill Gates, the man who built an empire in silence, was forced to explain himself out loud. The myth cracked. Inside Microsoft, panic spread. Not because of fines, not because of headlines, but because the company realized something terrifying. Its greatest weapon, control, was now its greatest weakness. The same tactics that built the empire were now threatening to destroy it. Microsoft was winning the market, but losing the narrative. For the second time in its life, Microsoft stood at the edge, not because it lacked technology, but because it had too much power. And power, when unchecked, always attracts consequences. What Microsoft did next would decide whether it would collapse or evolve. Survival doesn't always look like strength. Sometimes it looks like silence. After the lawsuits, Microsoft did something rare for an empire. It stepped back, not to surrender, but to rethink. Because brute force had failed, and the world had changed. The future was no longer about control through dominance. It was about control through dependency. Microsoft stopped trying to be loved. Instead, it focused on being needed. It moved away from flashy consumer battles and leaned into infrastructure. Enterprise systems, cloud computing, invisible services that power everything, but take credit for nothing. This wasn't retreat. It was camouflage. When power becomes invisible, it becomes harder to question. Microsoft no longer needed users to admire it. It needed governments to rely on it, hospitals to trust it, corporations to build on it. And slowly, the world did. Not because Microsoft demanded loyalty, but because leaving became too expensive, too complex, too risky. Microsoft learned a dangerous lesson. People don't resist systems they grow up inside. Once your data lives there, once your workflows depend on it, once your employees are trained in it, freedom becomes theoretical, choice becomes nostalgic, and control becomes absolute, without ever needing to be enforced. This was Microsoft's second empire, not loud like the first, not aggressive, not visible, but deeper. It didn't control what you bought, it controlled how you worked, how you communicated, how organizations thought about technology. Microsoft stopped being a product, it became a foundation. Unlike flashy tech giants, Microsoft didn't dominate headlines. It dominated systems. You don't see it in your pocket every day, You see it in spreadsheets deciding salaries, in servers running governments, in software shaping decisions that affect millions. Microsoft didn't chase culture, it shaped structure. From the outside, Microsoft looked stable, unshakable. But stability can be misleading, because the larger a system becomes, the more fragile it is to disruption. And somewhere beyond the horizon, a new threat was forming. Not another company, not another product, but a shift in how intelligence itself worked. And Microsoft was about to face a question it couldn't outbundle or outlock. For decades, Microsoft controlled software. But the future wasn't about software anymore. It was about intelligence, not coded by humans, but trained on them. Suddenly, the rules Microsoft mastered were no longer enough. Because intelligence doesn't install itself, it learns, and learning systems don't obey the same boundaries. This time, Microsoft couldn't rely on lock-ins, couldn't rely on contracts, couldn't rely on habit, because artificial intelligence doesn't care about legacy. It doesn't respect dominance, it replaces it. And for the first time in years, Microsoft wasn't ahead, it was racing. Microsoft made a choice that echoed its past, not to build everything alone, but to align itself with intelligence itself. It didn't try to own AI, it tried to integrate it, embed it, normalize it, just like it once did with operating systems. History wasn't repeating, it was rhyming. Look around. Governments don't run on paper anymore. Hospitals don't trust memory. Corporations don't rely on instinct. They rely on systems. Systems shaped by Microsoft. Not loudly, not visibly, but permanently. The company didn't change how we use computers. It changed how we organize reality. So did Microsoft make the world better? Or just more manageable? Did it empower people? Or quietly train them to accept invisible authority? Because when systems decide for us, we stop questioning the decisions. And when we stop questioning, power stops needing permission. Every empire begins with an idea, but ideas don't stay pure. They adapt, they negotiate, they compromise. Microsoft didn't conquer through force, it conquered through time, by arriving early and staying quietly. And the most dangerous empires are the ones you stop noticing. Microsoft is no longer just a company. It's a layer beneath decisions, beneath institutions, beneath intelligence itself. And as the world steps into an age where machines don't just execute commands, but make judgments, one question remains unanswered. Who controls the systems that now think for us? Because the next empire won't announce itself. It will already be running in the background.